This happened when I was 8. I lived in a very small village, more of a patch of houses really, barely any people. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone. I don't even know if it had a real name, but we just called it the Ridge 'cause of the tall hill near the east side. My best friend back then was a girl named Emmy. We were both 8, maybe 9. We did everything together, biked, played in the woods, made little hideouts behind sheds. Summer lasted forever back then. One day, the old lady who lived at the edge of town, Mrs. Telly, told us she was having her 80th birthday party that weekend. She was always kind, gave us little candies when we passed by. She said she needed 2 full pails of blueberries for her birthday pie and jam, and asked if we could go out and pick them. We said yes right away, no hesitation. I remember feeling proud that she trusted us. We went out after lunch with 2 rusty metal buckets and started picking in the fields near the old road. It was hot that day, like sunburn after 5 minutes hot. We picked for what felt like hours but barely filled half of 1 bucket. The bushes were all picked over, or the berries were shriveled and dry. I was sweating through my shirt, and Emmy had tied hers around her waist. Her cheeks were bright red. We were about to give up and head back when we saw them. 2 men walking toward us from the side of the field, not old, but not young either. Probably in their 20s, both wearing button-up shirts, black pants, and sunglasses. In the middle of a heat wave, one of them leaned down and smiled, said something like, "What are you kids up to out here? Picking blueberries," I said. He nodded and crouched down next to us. His friend just stood behind him, not saying anything, just looking around like he was waiting. "There's a whole patch of them up over that hill," Kay said, pointing behind him. "Really fat ones. Hardly anyone knows it's there." Emmy was looking at me weird. She didn't say anything, but I remember her hand tugging a little on my sleeve. "We can show you, if you want," the guy said. "You'll have your buckets full in no time." And for some dumb reason, I said yes. I didn't think about it, didn't wonder who they were, didn't ask why 2 grown men were walking through fields without any buckets or gear or anything. I just said yes, and we followed. As we walked, Emmy stayed quiet. I kept trying to ask questions. "Is it far? Do you guys live here? What's your name?" They gave vague answers like "you'll see" or "almost there." The second guy still hadn't said anything at all. The grass got taller and the sun felt worse the higher we climbed. We couldn't even see the village anymore. I remember my stomach started to feel weird. Not sick, just off, like a knot was forming. Then Emmy leaned toward me and whispered in the softest voice I've ever heard, "Something's wrong with these guys." Wow, I barely had time to process it before she bolted, full speed, down the hill, not even looking back. I dropped the bucket and ran after her. I don't even know if they chased us. I didn't look, I just ran and ran like my life depended on it. The grass slapped my arms, my legs hurt, my chest was burning, but I didn't stop. We finally saw the village again, the tiny road, the roof of Mrs. Telly's house. We ran straight into her yard. She was sitting on her porch, sipping sweet tea. We tried to explain, but were both breathing so hard we sounded insane. She got us inside, locked the door, gave us water. When we finally calmed down, we told her everything. She didn't say much, just looked out the window for a long time. The men were gone, completely vanished. We never saw them again. No one in the village had ever seen them before. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if Emmy hadn't said anything, if she hadn't ran, if we'd followed them another 5 minutes. I still dream about their faces. That's the way they kept looking around like they were waiting for something. I've already posted this story on another subreddit, but it wasn't in English, and you guys are more fun to talk to, so this is one of my only scary experiences. It happened when I was 13 or 14. I was on vacation in England with my parents, my uncle and his then girlfriend. We had rented an Airbnb in Oxford for 3 nights, and it was the first day. We'd just gotten there, and the adults went out to buy groceries. I was tired from the trip, so I decided to stay in the apartment. It had 6 rooms, the hallway, the bathroom facing the entrance door, with the kitchen, the living room and the 2 bedrooms on the sides. My room had 2 beds, one next to the door and the other on the other side of the room, under the window and next to the radiator. So anyways, I was now alone in the flat, and I started watching horror stories. Ironically, I was listening with headphones on, but they were low quality so I could kinda hear through them. So eventually, like 10 to 20 minutes after my parents left, I started to hear voices. I paused the video and the voices stopped. 30 seconds later, the video was back on, and I heard voices again. So this time, I took the headphones off. I could still hear the voices, so I assumed it might have been people from another flat on the same floor. But at one point, they started to knock on the door and call, "Hello." I was alone. I was 14 and I had just watched compilations of horror stories in a row. You think I was gonna answer? No. I put the video back on, but I was uneasy, so I wasn't really listening. Instead, I was focused on the voices. And I was right, because not a minute later, I heard the front door open. It couldn't be my parents. We're not native English speakers, and that accent was too good to be theirs, even if they were playing a prank on me, and it was definitely not their voice. So I did what any reasonable paranoid 14-year-old would have done in this scenario. I grabbed my stuff that was on the bed, my phone and my dagger. I used to have a pair of daggers, and I would always take at least one with me on trips, just to be safe. Yes, I was a weird kid, and I hid behind the bed, so between the mattress and the wall, and I called my dad, in tears, panicked, whisper shouting so that he would hear me but the intruder wouldn't, that there was someone in the apartment. Meanwhile, the intruder was opening every door and checking every room. For some reason, my dad said he would be back in maybe 10 minutes. He told me to stay hidden and quiet, and I could hear him running on the other side of the line. Eventually he hung up, and not 2 minutes after that, the person opened the door to my room. And I prayed, I'm an atheist, still, to whatever God's up there, that he would not walk straight toward me. And, of course, with my legendary luck, he walked straight toward me. So I closed my eyes, breathed in, clutched my knife and my phone, and got up, shaking. If I had to go down, I would go down fighting. When I faced him, I could just see the surprise on his face. He almost jumped when he saw me. I mean, who wouldn't, really, when you break into a house and see a crying, scowling teenager holding a weapon in your general direction, getting up from behind a bed? I asked with a heavy French yes. I'm French. Surprise, surprise accent. Who are you? And you know what the guy said. He had the audacity to answer, I'm the owner of the apartment. Just kidding. I'm not actually mad. My dad got there like 1 minute later, during which the guy and me were just standing there, side-eyeing each other in awkward silence, and we both cried a lot, while the guy almost also cried and apologized over and over again. I apologized to don't worry. It turns out when we arrived the boiler had died, and my parents called him to warn him, but managed to fix it after a while, and the guy came without warning them, because he wanted to check the radiators. That's why he came straight toward me when he walked into the room I was in. But all is fine. What's funny is, during the few minutes I spent in pure terror in the room, while he was checking the rest of the flat, my brain was divided into halves. One that was absolutely chaotic, and the other, slightly more rational, that went stay quiet. And maybe if we survive we'll post this on Reddit one day. I guess I have finally achieved that. Okay, I never really post anything on Reddit, mostly just reading. So please excuse me if I do or say anything that isn't common courtesy here. In around 2018-2019, I-5F, at the time was 1819, was living in Nebraska, where I grew up. I lived in the largest city in Northeast, but it was still essentially surrounded by corn and wheat fields. The city was expanding, so rich folks started building huge houses with giant properties on the edge of town as things proceeded to grow. All of that being said, I had a good friend whose parents' house was one of those big ones right on the blurring line between the fields and the city. My friends and I were constantly hanging out at his place because it was fun. They had tons of property to ride for XFOURS on, a hot tub, a huge living room for us to watch sports and have reality TV binge sessions, and so on. Plus his parents were super cool, and we could drink out there as long as we stayed at the house. It was tons of fun, even though I was divided by I'm quite scared of the dark, so I would just not go outside after a certain time, because there was little lighting and the nearest neighbor was about a mile away. I always felt a weird energy driving divided by from his place if it was late at night, but never had anything happen until one night. The drive out, there was a long winding two-way road that had fake trees on both sides, and you pass one of the city's largest cemeteries on the way. Barely any lighting, of course, besides the street lamps every once in a while, and very little traffic. It's all inherently a bit creepy, and I'll admit to having sped through this section of road many times to get through it as quickly as possible. This specific night was perfect spring weather, so I was driving with my windows down listening to music, and it was around 10 p.m. I was coming around one of the curves in the road when I had to essentially slam my brakes on. Right in front of me in the middle of the road, maybe 50 yards away, was what looked like a family. Again, picture a completely pitch black road with thick forest on both sides and only my headlights to show what's in front of me. This was a family of 3-4, a tall, slim woman, an average height divided by weight man, a child, short hair but couldn't tell the gender based on the clothing, and couldn't see their face, maybe around 8 years old, and the mother was pushing a fucking stroller. Their clothes looked normal, not tattered but not nice. They also were not carrying any kind of light source, meaning before I arrived behind them in my car, they had been walking in the pitch black. They were all facing away from me, walking completely silent in the middle of the street, the same direction I was heading. I had turned my music down to hear if they were speaking, had music playing, and so on. They didn't. The hairs on my arms immediately stood up. I came to a stop in the road behind them, obviously, and just sat there for a moment to let them move. They seemed to be completely unaffected by me and didn't even turn their heads slightly, nor did they attempt to move out of my way. I literally thought I was going insane, or that I was dreaming. It was so surreal. Before I really had time to fully process and register what I was seeing and how truly strange it was, they all, at the same time, stopped walking and very slowly turned to face my car. This scared the absolute shit out of me. I honestly didn't even give myself enough time to look at their faces as they turned. I immediately threw my car in reverse and sent it backwards for probably a full 20 seconds before flipping a U-turn, nearly running myself off the road and booking it the other direction. The only thing I remember noticing is that the stroller looked to be completely empty. This was the part that sticks in my mind the most. I've never felt terror like that in my life. I checked my rearview mirror probably 1,000 times before getting to a main road and never saw a glimpse of them. In fact, I never saw a glimpse of them ever again. I tried asking my friend and his family about it, only to essentially feel like I was insane because of the way they looked at me. Every time I tell this story, I get one of three reactions. They immediately think I'm fucking cuckoo, think I'm lying, or have had something sort of similar happen to them. I really don't care if no one believes me. Honestly, it was, and still is, the creepiest thing to ever happen to me. I think about it all the time. It was either some weird-ass family trying to scare the shit out of someone, a distraction for an attempted robbery divided by assault divided by and so on, or it was something more sinister. I'm going to tell myself for probably the rest of my life that it was the first option. This happened maybe around 2015-2016. I was a preteen young teenager at the time. I still have no idea what can explain this, and I've told many people about it. I grew up with very strict parents who often grounded me and enjoyed waiting until holidays or any such day I was excited for. This time I had been grounded for the entirety of Christmas break, meaning no presents, no electronics, no friends divided by going out, and so on. My parents had invited friends over during one of these nights. These friends brought their two dogs over to play with our family dog. The adults had decided to go out. I don't remember what for, some party or something. Either way, since they weren't coming back until next morning, I was tasked with watching and caring for the dogs. I, of course, used this opportunity to watch the TV downstairs in the living room with the dogs. Obviously, since it was Christmas time, our house was decorated. Most notably were these sort of fragile plastic or glass fake candles on each window, plugged in to light up. So I was laying on the couch, watching TV with all three dogs snuggled up around me, but every few hours they'd all leap off the couch and start barking endlessly at the front door right beside the living room. The first time, I had gone over to the window next to the front door to see if my parents and their friends were pulling into the driveway early, or if maybe a neighbor came by, or a wild animal in the yard, and so on. Nothing. So I ushered the dogs back to the couch, relaxed, and it was fine. But it kept happening over and over again. I don't remember exactly how many times the dogs did this, but at the last time, I had gotten up to calm them down again. I noticed they were angled slightly more to the window with a candle than the door this time. I was intending to peek out the window to see if something was there, but as I did so, the candle was suddenly torn out from the socket in the wall and broke against the wall behind me. The dogs erupted in more panic. I had no idea what to do and ran upstairs with them following. I don't exactly know what my plan was here. If this happened nowadays, I'd most likely go outside or go to a neighbor. But regardless, I locked myself and the dogs in my bedroom upstairs until I eventually fell asleep. The next morning, my parents returned and I got in trouble for breaking their decorative candle. They'd never believe me if I told them what happened, and I'm honestly still confused. I think it's something paranormal, but I'll never know fully. So this story happened about 11 years ago. I was a senior in high school at the time, but it is the single most mind-boggling thing that I have ever experienced. It's also important to note that it happened in mid-December. I am from Iowa, and the winters here get cold at night. Like if you get stuck outside, you will die kind of cold. That plus the snowfall makes everything dead silent. You can hear anything and everything inside the house and even immediately outside of it. Well, me and my best friend were hanging out in my family's walkout basement, just having a boring winter night playing video games. We were also the only ones home. The reason it was just us is because my mother went from work straight to a bar to grab a few drinks with coworkers. So me and my friend thought it would be a good idea to break into the family wine and live a little. As we were sitting there opening up the first bottle, I hear the door to the garage open and slammed shut. I immediately go, oh shit, and start looking for places to hide the bottle. My friend then says, I thought you said your mom was supposed to be out all night. She was, I replied. I then heard a few heavy stomps and hear my mother yell out, meow sanbu. Anyone home? I yell back up the stairs, yup, just hanging out in the basement. I hear a few more steps move from the garage door towards the stairs, and she yells out again, can you come help me with something? I need you up here. I reply back while frantically trying to find a good place to hide the wine bottle, yup. Give me just a minute. Then there was silence for about 20 seconds. Anyone down there with you? She yelled back in a more concerned, serious tone, in a voice that was slightly off of my mother's. This was the first thing that told me something wasn't right. Our family never cared if anyone was over, as our house was a very open house to all family and friends. And the voice, it was just wrong. Like it sounded like my mother's, but it was missing something that I couldn't put my finger on. Weirded out, I reply back, just Colton. After I yelled that back to her, I found a good place to hide the bottle and began walking up the steps to the next level. Now, as I was walking up the steps, I couldn't help but feel the overbearing silence of the house and the slight electric twinge that something isn't right. When I got to the top of the steps, I look over to where the door to garage is and also the kitchen right next to it, and it's black. Pitch black. All of the lights were off, and there was no moonlight shining through any windows. I walked over to the kitchen yelling out, Mom, where are you? There was no reply, just silence and darkness. I feel the electric twinge turn into full needles, and my adrenaline kicking in full force. I have to get out of here as fast as possible. My mother was not home. I run back down the stairs, grabbing my coat along the way. What's wrong? Colton says. My mom's not home, I reply as fast as I can, looking for my truck keys. What do you mean? You were just talking with her. I could see the confusion in his face. There's no one home. We need to leave now. I took a few steps towards the back door that opens up to the yard, and then I see my dog shaking on the couch and my cat growling behind it. I couldn't leave them. I just knew that if we left, something would happen. Are we leaving? Colton said, still confused as all hell. No, I can't leave them here alone. Something is really off. I'm going to call my mom and figure this out. I pull out my phone and call my mom. She picks up immediately. Mia Senbu. What's going on? She answers. Mom, were you just home? I heard you yelling for me from the second level, and when I went up you weren't there. I said frantically, hoping that she was playing a joke. No, I'm just leaving the bar. I wasn't feeling very well. Are you okay? What do you mean you heard me? I fill her in on the whole story and she rushes home. Colton and I stayed in the basement with the animals until she got home. But before she did, you could hear something upstairs. Not walking or sitting on things, but a pressure in the air, like a black hole was slowly moving from one room to the next. And the word that I would instinctively describe it as is hungry. When she got home, you could feel the thing leave just as quick as it came, like an overbearing predatory presence had just flown away. We still have never figured out what the hell was going on. And this is just one story of many unexplainable things that have happened to us. But this is the easiest to write down, and one that I was happy to have a witness. My mother has passed away now, and I have moved away to Arizona. But whenever I go back to Iowa and I see Colton, he still gets creeped out by what had happened. I will never truly know what happened, but I know that whatever it was that had my mother's voice, it was evil and it was hungry. This happened in summer of 2020. I F0 at the time had gone on a trip to Moab, UT with my roommate and best friend. Since high school, Kendall F1 at the time, we had last minute joined her family's trip, celebrating her sister's high school graduation. We lived a few hours by car from Moab, which had just reopened after being closed to the public due to COVID. They had plans to go skydiving and we were excited to tag along. Our plan was to drive separately, stay the night on the couch of her family's Airbnb, go skydiving with them, then stay the last night at a small cabin in a campground right outside town. Just the two of us as an added adventure. We had never been on a trip as adults staying on our own, and we're excited to have the independence. Fast forward, we had a great trip down there as well as a fun first night with Kendall's family. We all went skydiving in the morning early. It was beautiful. After Kendall, I had a huge adrenaline rush and decided to go for a hike to a watering hole. There we explored and even did a small cliff jump into the water. By the end of the day, we were exhausted physically from our activities and from the rush and now drop of adrenaline. We had checked into our campground, which was about 10 miles from the town. There was a general store at the mouth of the property, with somewhat unfriendly older cashiers to check us in, but we didn't think much of it. The campground was made of different sections for tents, RVs, and small cabins. When I say small cabins, I mean room for 2 twin beds and a chair and hardly anything else. We stayed in one of those. Like I said, Moab had just reopened to tourists, so besides us, we saw one other family of 3 staying in the entire campground. We also noticed we didn't have a cell phone signal in the camp. Remember that? By nightfall, we could hardly move our bodies. We were so sore and spent about an hour in camp chairs under the stars drinking a few Mike's Hards. Before I knew it, I realized we had had a little too much for being in an unfamiliar place on our own, but shook it off. We decided to call it a night and grabbed our lantern to head to the communal bathrooms to wash our faces. Also, I'll add now that Kendall had sprained her ankle a month prior to this, and was wearing a boot on her right leg. Yes, she went skydiving and hiking with this. We were young and eager to get out after lockdown, but she was unable to drive with the angle our foot needed to be at to brake safely, so I had been doing all the driving. We made our way to the bathroom, giggling through the pitch dark with our light. We reached the hut that held the first separated bathrooms. Each had a shower directly across from the door, and a toilet and sink against on side wall. We swung the door on, eager to get out of the dark, and flipped the light switch on. I entered the room first and immediately stopped in my tracks. Kendall stopped in the doorway. We both were silent. There was something off. I don't know how to describe it, but it was like an intense feeling something was wrong. We stared forward at the shower, which had the curtain half drawn closed. There was some kind of short stepping stool in the middle of the shower with the front legs poking out from behind the curtain. My eyes started to rise and I could just make out the faint silhouette of a person standing on the stool behind the thin curtain. We stood there frozen in shock, confusion and disbelief. There couldn't be someone hiding behind the curtain like a scary movie. Suddenly Kendall broke the silence. "What's that?" I looked to my right where the sink was. Propped on the sink against the mirror was an iPhone with the screen facing us. The camera was out and recording. That snapped me out of my trace. I shouted, "Nope," and we both turned around and basically ran back to our cabin. Honestly, I know we didn't handle the situation well. Please don't get on me in the comments. If it had happened now, there's no way we wouldn't have reported it. But we were young and scared. We didn't know how to process what was happening. I still don't know really what happened. Anyways, we never stayed there again. Sorry it was so long. Kinda relived it while writing it. We locked the door and tried to figure out what we just did walked into. We couldn't call anyone cause we had no signal, and this was our first time staying somewhere new on our own. I had been drinking and didn't feel confident that I could drive through the rocks and sharp turns and make it back to the highway. We tried to calm ourselves down, talk our way out of what we saw. We turned the lights off cause I couldn't get the image of someone looking through the small one window on the door leading into our cabin. We were all alone in this campground, completely exhausted physically from our skydive and hiking. I know it sounds dumb, but at the time we were so confused and tired. Just decided to go to sleep and leave first thing in the morning. We pushed our beds together and lay there in the dark in silence. I started to think about the staff who worked at the campground, and if they, knowing it was almost empty, had been the one in the bathroom, or if we were just mistaken in what we saw. About 10 minutes into laying there, Kendall said, "You know what's weird?" I frowned, waiting to hear something to add to this horrible situation. She told me about earlier when she had gone to take a shower, how she looked up and saw a blinking blue light in the vent above the shower. I didn't say anything. We left in the morning and never spoke about any of it again. I'll try and keep this short, so please forgive length, to protect the building itself, since it still exists and vacant. I won't share its name and I'll be vague on location, but the story is true. I've been an EMT going on 19 years. In those years, I worked for many a different ambulance agency. One agency I worked for was a hospital, Base 911, provided by Interfacility Ambulance Provider, because it was owned and run by a hospital company. Many of our stations were in the hospitals themselves. One of these hospitals was a small rural hospital in a very small town in NJ. Years ago, smaller hospital companies like the one I worked for were struggling financially, and larger corporations came in to buy out the smaller ones. When this company came in, it decided to close permanently this hospital. It was a gradual closure. First, they shut down medical floors and other services, but kept the ER open, but only during normal business hours. This too was shut down months later. Our station here was unaffected, and we had 24/7 access to this now empty of human hospital. While this wasn't a full-time station of mine, I did work out of there on a handful of occasions before they sold the building and moved the station elsewhere. Now imagine a hospital empty of anyone except one small office for an EMS crew. Everything was still in the hospital's rooms and offices, just lacking us humans. It was creepy having this building, once full of life and energy, now silent and dormant. Anyways, I come in one morning, and the ambulance crew I would be relieving was out still. I get to the station around 5 a.m. for a 5 a.m. clock-in time. It was my first time at this station, and like many other humans, I was curious about what this empty hospital was like. So since I had time, I started walking around the old hallways, silent and just admiring what the building once was. I walk into the old chapel, ICU, and other areas briskly to not forget I'm actually there to work soon. The EMS office was just located off the main entrance and waiting room. I'm walking back to this EMS office to punch in. As I'm walking back, I start hearing whispering, clear as day whispering voices. At first I couldn't tell where they were coming from, until I started getting closer to the waiting room. They got louder, but still whispers. I was thinking, okay, maybe the one security guard they had stuffed was sitting in there on the phone being silent. As I walked into the dark waiting room, nothing, no one, and the voices stopped. Punch in, and not much of my time was spent there during the day. Days later, I worked there again. This time I'm working with someone else who also never worked there before. Like me, she was just as curious about the building. I took her around the areas I knew and told her about what I witnessed only a few days earlier. We are once again walking back to our office near the waiting room. We are just talking when she interrupts me and asks me if I heard something. I didn't, but the silence revealed what she was hearing. Once again, we start hearing whispering voices, clear voices, but not hearing what is being said. As we tried to find the source this time, it was coming from an old office just outside the waiting room. As we walk in, nothing empty except for a desk. The voices stopped again. It was amazing that I had someone there to tell me I wasn't just hearing things and witnessed what I did. After that, I never had a chance to work out of there again. As the hospital building got sold and the station was relocated elsewhere, this building still exists to this day, vacant and waiting for redevelopment, I suppose. Last I drove by it untouched, surprisingly. This was a bit ago, but this still scares me and my family to where we check our house every night before bed. The apartment I lived in wasn't big, it's structured, where my room was right across the front door. And if you looked from the front door and you turned to the left, a living room divided by kitchen, to the right a closet, and in front my bedroom door. And if you go past the kitchen divided by living room, a hallway, and then my mom's room. Everything else was through the hallway. Unfortunately, I ended up with a fire escape next to my bed. At the time, we were breaking a little rule and putting a AC in my window due to my asthma acting up if I get too hot. It was a Friday around beginning of his school year, yet still a bit hot. Since it was a Friday, I'd get to stay up late like any other kid waiting to chill for the weekend. When I got home from school, everything was alright, nothing out of the normal. My older brother was at work M to 0, and I F14 and went to do some studying. Then to my mom's room to play with my little brother around 4, let's call him A. At almost 9 to 11 p.m. my mom and A Saturday in her room, watching a show while A was on his tablet. My mom went to heat up some dinner from the other night. When she heard shuffles from my room, she was confused but thought it was the cats, 3 cats, until she turned to the cat tree to see 2 and the other was in the room with me and A. She was starting to get scared and then she heard a bang, so she went to my room and opened the door to see a lady's foot on my bed, her leg through the window, and was attempting to crawl inside my room through my window. And my mom started to talk saying, "You can't stay here." I knew my mom liked to joke about ghosts due to our light by the front door being faulty, so at first I thought she was having a little joke for me to hear, oblivious to the real situation going on inside my room. Confusion, almost fear kicked in when she kept repeating stuff similar to rejecting entry. Now when my mom told the lady she didn't care and again that she can't stay, I started getting fully scared and my mom called my name to bring stuff, and so I did when I got a hammer and a broom. I saw the lady. She was pale and looked really tired, eggs under her eyes. She had a pole in her hand. She had black shorts and a tight black top and no shoes. My AC on the floor and my stuff thrown at the lady all around her, my makeup case and other trinkets of mine. I was shaking and wanted to cry and had a nervous laugh and was holding it back. The lady begged and pleaded to stay, and my mom rejected her pleas, words such as, "Please let me stay. My mom just died and my girlfriend just broke up with me and I have nowhere to go. Please let me stay." My mom's response was really funny. "So what? My mom is dead too. My grandma has been dead for 21st years soon." After throwing stuff at her, she left and my mom grabbed the pole from my old bed set that we were gonna throw out soon and put it in the window to keep it shut. My mom called the police and they soon arrived and I was shaken all night. They took the pole in an old shirt of mine to keep her fingerprints. My mom came to me and told me that she saw the lady outside in the hallway being taken away after attempting to breaking into the family above us. And my mom quickly got a hit before being pulled back. Me and my mom talked all night until sunrise. She told me that a lady in our building told her about the women breaking into others' places through fire escapes, and my mom brushed it off, not taking it seriously. She was paranoid, questioning how many times has she or others have done this before, and if they took anything. And if that's why random stuff or food went missing, or our cats were always afraid when people leave my room or walk into the house via the front door. Now every night and every time we go to visit family, we put the pole in the window, afraid of another intruder entering our home without knowledge. I advise anyone to lock or put poles in your window and always get blackout curtains, so this stuff doesn't happen to you as well. Okay, so it's a story when I was like 6 or 7 years old, or let's just say 2014. So me, my mom, dad, my grandma and my uncle, my dad friend, visited a holy place. I am from India and here we have faith in God very much, so let's call the holy place Mars. So we reach Mars a night. It was like 1 or 2 am and all the hotels are booked, also so many rooms. Like Airbnb, not Airbnb, but yeah, like it. Oh, somehow we spent the night at somewhere, don't know where. Next day we have the same problem, no hotel found. And we wanna book a hotel near the temple, so it will be nearby and we can visit it anytime. So after sometimes during night, we found a school name. I don't know the school name because it was a abandoned school and also it just have a security guard. Don't know why it even have a guard. What five's gonna steal from a abandoned school? So when we visit that school, my dad asked the guard, can we stay at that school for night, and he answered yeah, but just one night. We were also good in that because we had to leave Mars after that night. Summarize the whole thing's day 1. We reach at night, no hotel. Day 2. Same day as day 1, no hotel found, but found a abandoned school at night. Day 3. We have to leave Mars with the abandoned school. Okay, so we were at the school, me, my mom, my grandma, and no one was in that school. My dad and uncle was at the temple, and it was nighttime in India. Even at nighttime, holy places are crowded, so like around 1 or 2 am we were awake. Except me, I was sleeping. What do you expect from a 6 years old to stay awake at night? No. So suddenly we heard a knock on our door. So we opened the door. We thought it must be the guard who came to told us something. I know it was a dumb thinking. Why the guard will even have to do with us at 1 am? So we were like, okay, let's open the door. There was no one. We thought it must be rats who are creating some noise. And we thought it's a knock on door. So we again closed the door, and after some time again, we heard a door knock. We thought it was rats, so we ignored it, but after a few minutes we again heard it. There was dead silence, so now we are confirmed that it was not rat, it was someone really on the door. So first we thought not to open the door, and we tried to call dad. He didn't answer the phone nor the uncle. So my mom tried to see in the lower level of door. The clearance, yeah, clearance. So she tried to look at that clearacne or gap. She saw that there was a girl legs. A girl was standing there like a teenage girl. I mean, so my mom got scared that why a girl is standing at a door in nighttime. So now in our dumb brains the thought finally came that we are now at a haunting place. And that was not a girl, that's a ghost or a soul or whatever. So we thought what to do. In short, we got panicked, and then my grandma thought that we should call a priest, something like priest not priest, and he told us first not to panic and chant some spiritual things. Something like IDK, how to explain, we call it mantra. Till it was day we start chanting it. What I mean by chanting is not like screaming but at a low voice. And after that around 4 am my dad and uncle came. And we felt relief, and after like 2 hours we leave that abandoned school. And finally we found a hotel. Also one thing, when we were leaving the guard was not at the door nor his things are there. When we found the hotel we sleep for like 8 or 9 HRS because of the stress. After that my dad again go there and ask some people around there. Those people were living near that school for a long time. They told us that school was haunted and a girl committed suicide in that school. BCZ she fall in love with someone but her parents aren't agree with the marriage, so she end her life. We still visit Mars with the holy place every year but never go near that school. I've been living in this apartment since I was 2 years old. We were 5 before, but now it's only my mother, my aunt, and I. The first time this spirit, ghost or whatever it is, showed itself, I was 15. It was around 6:30 a.m., and I was almost finished eating my breakfast when I heard a faint sound coming right beside me. I turned my head and freezed when I saw my water bottle open and spinning around its mouth. The cap, I could only stare at it, spinning by itself many times in a way that it would have fallen from it. But it didn't. After a minute or so, it stopped. I reached over the beside table and lifted the cap for a moment before putting it back in place. Right after I did this, the cap started to spin again. I stopped looking at it, completely in fear. Shortly after, my mom appeared by my open door to ask me something, and my bottle's cap had already stopped spinning, like 2 seconds before she arrived. After that, nothing happened for a long time, but it never stopped. Whatever is in my home, I can't tell if it's only one entity or more. Weird stuff kept happening since that day until now. Sometimes it takes months for this being to do something, and other times it's a couple things in the same month, and it varies. Once I was alone at home, watching TV in the living room, when suddenly I heard this freaking loud noise from the kitchen, as if someone had hit a pot with a baseball bat, and then it fell to the floor violently. I ran to my room and got ready to dial the police when I noticed there was no other sounds coming from the kitchen. I grabbed my baseball bat, ironic, what, and stupid decision, and silently walked over to the kitchen. I reached the door, ready to strike someone, when I noticed the kitchen was clean as always. The pot my mom had left on the oven was still there intact. This being also played with my nightgown 2 times, both of them when I was in my bedroom. I had moved to a different bedroom watching TV. I guess this entity likes to mess with me when I'm watching TV. Seriously. Once it took the form of my mother. It was 5:30 a.m., and it was really dark in the apartment. I had just woken up and went to my mom's room, but she wasn't there. I assumed she was in the kitchen preparing her breakfast, so I went back to my room. Just when I took one step into the corridor, I saw my mom's silhouette entering my bedroom. I reached out my hand to talk to her, but I immediately remembered that she probably didn't notice me. I would give a heart attack touching her so suddenly in the dark, so I waited for her to get further into my room so I could turn on the lights and not spook her. But when I finally faced my bedroom's door and turned in the lights while starting to call her attention, she wasn't there. I frowned in confusion and then in fear when I realized it was that spirit messing with me again. This incident happened last month, and it never has done anything similar before. I shiver every time I think I almost touched it. Most of the times, this spirit only does things like touching my hair, or using my mom's voice to call for me, or placing awful smells at different parts of the apartment, or letting me see from the corners of my eyes a dark shadow fleeing in high speed, or an intense presence approaching or moving around me. I don't understand what this entity is or why it does these things. It also messes with my mother, but very little, and I don't know if it messes with my aunt. She's not a nice person, so I avoid her as much as I can, but there was this one time, late at night, when she asked me go to the kitchen to see if the fridge was open and I refused. She has a compulsion for checking out all of the doors of anything and everything in this apartment are closed and locked all the time. She insisted, saying that she was afraid of going there to check. That called my attention, because she likes to walk through the apartment in the complete dark, which I used to do, but only to grab a glass of water, so I can't judge her on that, and she had never mentioned being afraid of doing it before. until last month. I wish I could move out, but that's not possible at the moment for a good number of reasons. Does anyone here have any clues about what I'm dealing with and divided by or how to solve it?